Get ready to profit in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to a special episode of the show. Today we're going to have the random show, and I'm joined by Ray.
Hello.
And Blake.
Hey, team.
So we're back together and here to just kind of share some of the fun insights, things we're excited about, things we've been learning lately, in hopes that it gives you some ideas for actions, things to try, things to pursue. So thought it'd be cool to start with more advancements in AI. I've been, just the more that I experiment, the more that I learn about different platforms. It's a cool time, everyone. Where should we begin, guys?
I think we should talk about the changes in the makeup of search engine result pages and how things have just really progressed over the last, really, it's only been what?
6 months, maybe?
Yeah,
or a few, but it's like accelerating.
Back in my day.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's so different. I mean, Blake, you had this point before we started recording that doing a year-over-year comparison isn't really fair anymore, or it's just so different, right? Because of how that landscape is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that's always in the back of my head whenever I'm doing like data analysis. It's so hard to win an organic click these days with all of the different SERP features, and there's more and more ads than ever before, which should be a surprise to no one. But we always take into account seasonality. It's so important to take into account seasonality when you're doing data comparisons. You don't want to compare June to December if you're a swimming pool, I don't know, like supplier of some kind, right? Like that's not going to be a fair comparison. Yeah. But it's interesting because we're sort of in like a new era of search. And last year around this time, maybe things were sort of becoming more available, but nothing like we're seeing now, right? Like, and so things have just changed so drastically. Really, I would say probably within the last 5 to 6 months. That those year-over-year comparisons, it's the best we have. I'm not saying like don't do year-over-year comparisons, but it's something that I think should be, there's like an asterisk by it all the time. Like, hey, this has changed a lot. The SERP is not anything like it used to be this time last year. So it's just something to keep in mind, and always keep, in your analysis, always just keep it like on the side.
Yeah, and like context for our listeners, Microsoft has, of course, the new Bing. They've got the chat tab, and kind of widget built into their Bing search experience, the Bing search engine. On the Google side, we now have SGE, Search Generative Experiences. Depending on your settings within labs.google.com, you can either have SGE for search or SGE while browsing or both. Really cool. So this is level up. We've kind of got, rumors circulating very recently, end of August, early September, that Google's Gemini is forthcoming. It may be released sometime this fall, which is alleged to be trained on twice as many tokens as GPT-4. That could be yet another, leap, in capability and sophistication. But even what we're seeing now with these SGE Labs options, it's like a level up from kind of what Bard was when it first dropped. So these are some of the technologies that are starting to become embedded within that search experience, and let's like describe how these function, what they look like in search. Just kind of paint the picture for listeners if they don't have, these plugins, I guess, enabled. How is it actually impacting search?
Yeah, so I actually have some complaints about generative AI in search because just as the SEO guy, Google's always preaching like core web vitals, and cumulative layout shift is a CLS, is a core web vital. And the way that it works is you Google something, and then sort of at the top of the search result page, there's this generative AI. And sometimes when you Google, it'll just start spinning. It'll start thinking right away, and you'll scroll down. And while you're sort of scrolling down to find, whatever result you want to click on, it'll expand all of a sudden, and the layout shifts completely. So as the SEO guy, like, it drives me actually bonkers that Google is like going against the grain of what they preach all the time. But that's exactly what happens, like what I just explained. So when you Google something and you have generative AI, like SGE, it's enabled, it's literally like a synopsis of the top 10 results just show up at the top of your SERP. And relatively recently, Google has been providing more like source links within the content, within the synopsis in the generative AI, which is really, really interesting because there are basically organic links now in like more organic links. There were always kind of like some organic links, but more organic links embedded directly within the synopsis that the generative AI is providing, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and there was a short window of time where the browsing plugin within ChatGPT was functioning. Like, I feel like it was a matter of weeks before it got shut down. And once I got enabled on that, it was epic, right? I was making so much progress on different topics. So like, GPT-4, it's trained up until whatever date, 2021 or something. So it's really good at things that are like unchanging, or there's, things that have a great like corpus of text like leading up to that point. But anything that's like really recent or really new, like it's not great at unless it has access to the internet, at which point, it's doing what SGE and search is now doing, scraping the top results, providing a synthesis and like a readout of that, using like the wisdom of crowds type approach. So that's why I'm really excited about SGE for search right now, because it's like bringing back that functionality that I lost when they killed or nerfed the browsing plugin in GPT-4. So like one practical use case for me is tinkering with code things, and especially when I'm trying to, do coding applications related to, say, Google Ads, right? And like, oh, there's a new API version out, or there, if there have been recent changes, this is kind of the way to go. So I don't know. So that's super cool.
I think one interesting quick call out just when it comes to coding as well is like, I've tended to not trust GPT 3.5 as much as I do 4 when it comes to coding specifically nowadays. Like I've written Google Ad scripts, and it tends to get a lot closer with GPT-4 compared to 3.5. So you still have to tinker with things a little bit, and Google might look back, or I'm sorry, GPT might look back in Google and say, hey, this script, we think it'll work. Some of the variables might be different within the code, but I guess like my word of advice would be, if you have the subscription to GPT, try to use 4 for anything code related.
Yeah, and even I've been starting to use it more for sheets formulas as well, right? To use like more complicated, like nested formulas and lookups, which, like historically, and Blake, maybe the same is true for you. Were you an Excel guy before? I mean, we on the paid side, it was like such an important thing for manual bidding and pivot tables and reports and all this stuff. So I'm like, I feel like I was always at least an intermediate Excel user on that basis, but now this is like an unlock, because now I can instantly generate like conditional, lookups and different functions.
And that's what I'm really excited for with like a lot of this Google Lab stuff. Like we've been talking about SGE a lot, but there are additional plugins that kind of plug into like Google Sheets, where you can plug Google Sheets to this AI piece, and you can organize charts and tables and supposedly even create additional formulas as well. So I think like moving forward, the barrier to entry might be a little bit lower when it comes to like Google Sheets formulas or Excel formulas, but you still have to know what you want, but you should be able to use tools like GPT or Gemini potentially to write some of these formulas for you.
Yeah, well, and we just enabled Google's Duet AI for Workspace within the last several days, so we're starting to experiment with it. But early take within Docs, within Gmail, it's got kind of a composer, editor, proofreader type of tool. Within Sheets, like organizing data. It's a little bit clunky. Like I've tried several queries and it would just say like, cannot compute, try later, more features being added. Yeah. I'm sure that'll get better with time. But what I'm really excited for is within Slides, I can appreciate a well put together deck. It's also challenging at times, to add that level of polish and so on. But the prompting engine, the Duet AI within Google Slides, it's like having a mid journey built in to it.
Yeah.
So you give it a prompt and it's generating these cool, unique images and so on. Like, wow, that's gonna like lower the friction, the difficulty score. Like, we can all have much more polished, informative presentations this way.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, we just started using Duet this
2
week,
days
I think.
ago,
Yeah,
3
two
days ago.
days ago. So I have only very, very little experience with it. I had no idea that was even a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
That it was like mid-journey in Google Slides. It's incredible. Like the leaps we're taking, how quickly it's happening.
Right. And in the Google documentation for Gemini, what they're hinting at, what my take on some of that is, they're talking about like API interoperability and building it in a way that it's scalable, in a way that it will, plug into other tools. So I'm sure like that's probably where this is headed, right? Is like the human side. Like, how can you take this technology, connect it to other tools to extract, better insights, or, start training more effectively, or, there's going to be so many cool like use cases and ways to master the use of this. And like our roles are going to be more about, like we talked about before, it's like, can you become a master prompter on the data side? Like, can you be the engineer that architects and masterminds the way all of these are working together?
Mm-hmm.
Things like Gemini and Duet. Do you guys remember like that little like paperclip guy that used to be on like Microsoft? It's almost like that on like steroids. Like all this additional stuff that's being like,
It's Clippy.
right? Yeah, Clippy. It's like
Dude, Clippy
it's like
on
buff
roids.
Clippy right
yeah.
now. Like this is
Clippy.
He's back.
Clippy's back.
yeah.
We should actually generate that within slides
Midjourney.
later. Yeah, or Midjourney. Yeah. Buff Clippy.
I'll do
That's
it.
super cool. I mean, yeah. So, and what we're trying to figure out here, so we're talking about like impacts of AI on the SERPs, SGE. It seems, Blake, like from an organic standpoint, it's almost like the evolution of optimizing for featured snippets and zero-click results. Some of the best practices or thoughts, for me, I'm thinking structured data. Some of the basic things still apply. You have to make sure that you have a fast site. It's easy to crawl. It's easy to index. What other thoughts do you have, though? Like where this is headed, potential impacts. How do we even think about how we're performing organically with this in the mix?
There's so much to think about. I mean, truly, because on one hand, you like so going back to what you said about optimizing for feature snippets, it is kind of a level up from that. Like that's sort of, in my mind, the way that it's working. But what's unique about this is not every, like the featured snippet is the same every time. It's a static result. This is sort of dynamic. This is generative AI, right? Like it's changing. But you can really study the specific sources that Google provides within the generative AI. Like that's when it provides that source, and what source it provides is what you can really pay very, very close attention to and make an effort to optimize for that. So as an example, you could Google like, what is ADHD, just as an example. And then it'll have maybe, I don't know, 100-word synopsis of like what ADHD is. Generative AI will.
Yeah.
Within that synopsis, it'll have 5 drop-down arrows with sources, essentially. And each drop-down area is like sort of a segment of how Google is getting that result, like that specific generative piece of generative AI. You know what I mean? And so you can study that and kind of make sense and piece it together and say, okay, if we want to show up in this generative AI, we want to show up in this as a source here, we need to sort of answer this little snippet that it's providing and give it an opportunity to see us as the expert for that explanation. And again, you can kind of keep, that's sort of how featured snippet optimization works. I think in featured snippet, there's also like the specific types. So there's bulleted list, ordered list. Sometimes there's tables in featured snippets.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a little less relevant currently. It's mostly just like text.
A text-based results
Right.
with links to
Exactly. I think there's also a case for like image optimization. I've seen images show up in
the thumbnails on the
Yeah.
cards for the sources, quote unquote. Sources.
Exactly. I think that's going to be important, but I don't think. I mean, most people are publishing at least with at least one high quality image. Like that's usually not a barrier to success for most. But yeah, it's really just studying where and when Google drops in the source link, and then figuring out exactly what they're grabbing from that source and kind of replicating it, obviously delivering a better answer, and kind of piecing it together as you continue to go down the sources within the generative AI. Like that's kind of how the process that I think needs to be taken.
It's almost like a people ask similar type of questions, because like I've kind of went down a rabbit hole where it's like I may not necessarily know, like I'm not an expert on the piece that I'm searching, but then it's like, hey, did you consider this, or do you want to like go deeper into this piece? So like I don't know if that falls into like optimizing for some of that, but that's kind of where my head is going, is like I tend to like go down the rabbit hole where it's like, oh, I didn't consider this lens or go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the people also ask, and we talked like schema and FAQ markup specifically makes a lot of sense. And that's been true always, but like you can kind of keep going further and further, and you can pay close attention to like what are the other things that Google is suggesting.
Right. Because at the bottom, I've seen people also ask style within the SGE. They appear as bubbles at the bottom as like follow-up prompts, basically, if you want to think of it that way.
That's exactly it. And then you'll even kind of get like another result, like a search engine result page sort of when you do that.
Yep.
And so you can pay attention who's ranking there and who's kind of, I guess, winning that SERP. I don't know if that's really, I mean, it is a SERP in a way, but not in the traditional sense. But not like traditional is sort of
dead.
Yeah,
right?
it's
like we're trying to get the impression, but it's like we're trying to get the attention, the impression, the engagement, like we've always done, but just the way that the way that we, like as the marketer, the way that we reach the user and provide the value, the vehicle is changing, and the way it's delivered is changing.
I will say too, and I'm waiting for, I don't know how this data will be it's because these are in a way 0-click searches in a way, but they're much more interactive, and so like it's less likely that there truly is 0 clicks. You know what I mean? But that's what's being delivered is like your overview answer. You don't need to go any further, which is a bummer for people. That's why I said earlier it's hard to win an organic click these days. But I would be really, really interested to see what kind of engagement these generative AI snippets are actually getting. And I don't know if we'll ever truly get that data, but I think that would be really, really enlightening. I also wish within like a source medium report, if we could somehow see if the user clicked on our result within a generative AI.
Right.
That would be really enlightening sort of, because then you're sort of like you have the data to build the use case to spend time and like start optimizing for it.
I know Will Reynolds is working on it.
Right. I would love that. Data would be incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, 2 kind of really related lanes to this. One is the thought of, okay, if SGE is using the wisdom of crowds to generate its results, right? It's like this AI, it's not really good at like novel idea, like novel creation, right? That's still like the human element is like creating something brand new. This is like synthesizing, okay, back to your example of like, what is ADHD? Okay, here's what the top 10 articles say it is. Boom, 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 boom. Here's what the EDUs say and the .gov say and da-da-da-da, right? So it's like, it's doing that. But it's almost like if you like followed, like in the legal niche, I think they call this shepherdizing sources. So like, hey, we're citing this legislation, and then there's like a reference to like this case over here, and then you go there and you're like, okay, what's this statute? Oh, what's this sub-statute? Okay, what was this other case over here? And you go deeper and deeper until you finally reach the bottom. And it's like some original thing from 1938 or something, whatever. And like the same thing is true when you read books, like, The Power of Habit or something. You go in the bibliography and there's like 50 sources, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it all goes back to like this 1974 academic study of this, or, and this body of research by like this not very well known group or something. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, in our process, Blake, on search with content intelligence and just trying to build and engineer the most valuable piece of content within a niche. But I wonder if there's an argument for like, if you can conduct your own original research, like basically going as deep into the well as you can. So like go to the original source to generate something that's truly new and valuable or a unique take on it. because otherwise you're just like one of 10 and you get lost in the noise of the crowd, the wisdom crowd. And there's probably a value there and stuff.
You're just rehashing the information that's already there.
Exactly. It's like everyone's rehashing a rehash of a rehash. And like, how do you win? Well, you just have to be like one of the top 5 rehashes of the real like insight or definition from 50 years ago or whatever, but it's like, so that was kind of one thought was, can you do original research, or can you shepherdize, like, you're in SGE and you're like, this is if you're in SEO and you care and you want to rank, right? Like go deeper. Okay, what are all these articles drawing from? Okay, what was that? Now, okay, what were those drawing from? And like just go to the beginning and say, okay, what is this really telling us about this, topic or whatever? And how can we do more research or reinvent this or bring unique value to that user? So that's one. But here's the second one. Like, where does this go? All right. Do either of you guys have the ChatGPT app on your phone?
I don't actually, no.
Dudes, gotta get it. You know why? Because, all right, like search, all right, it's voice plus AI, right? SGE plus AI. And Ray, on your Pixel, have you ever done like on the home tab or like in the Google app on your Pixel and use your voice search that then spawned AI results?
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Right? So if you have the GPT app on your phone, you can use voice to do input and like interact with it, right? To keep prompting it or edit it or whatever. And so like this idea was kind of spawned by your comment, Blake, right? Like this is dynamic. And like for every, like, it's just like GPT. Ray, you can put in a prompt. I can put it in a second later. I can put in the same prompt 3 different times. And I'm going to get a slightly different result each time. And we know that a huge percentage of searches are new to Google, even to this day. And so you add voice in, that's going to, multi-factor the amount of combinations. But like just the speed and the way that people are going to get information using, AI-powered search plus voice on mobile. And yeah, just thinking about untangling that spaghetti from a reporting standpoint. But just kind of thinking about like, how are people going to use this and how will voice impact it? Will that be the unlock, right? Because it's like no friction. It's like now I have the freaking Oracle at the sound, like I just have to say, hey, Oracle, find me the blah, 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 best thing ever, Okay, here's everything that mankind has ever known about that. Great, cool.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the day where it's just embedded in your brain and you don't even have to say it out loud.
Oh, that's coming in 2026.
Yeah,
No, I'm just kidding.
At this point, I believe it, right?
Well, yeah, but here's what's interesting too, like back to that idea of what is the human's role as this continues to evolve. So at some point, and like I was like, hey, Gemini, rumored to be trained on twice as many tokens. Like when do we run out of training corpus material for these agents, right? Because
when do the robots train themselves?
Well, that's what I wonder. All right, let's go into philosophy really quick. Seriously, because look, all we're doing right now is like we're teaching these models to learn on different kinds of material content, right? It's largely written. So a lot of the work so far, it's like, how do we translate YouTube videos into transcripts and then feed that in? How do we take all the books ever written and digitize them and feed that in? How do we take all the music ever composed and feed that in? Great. So that's one lane. And then we're like, how do we teach it how to look at images and figure out what's going on with that? And like, oh, it's a man standing over here with a dark shadow and blah, blah. So now it's going to do that. And then it's getting into video. But at some point, and even audio, right? But at some point, it will have mastered all of that, and it will have consumed everything that humans have ever output and been documented, right? So then we're going to start generating new works, or it will start synthesizing and producing like, all right, now we're going to take all of these ideas, we're going to prompt it with this, we're going to add chaos level 4. I don't know if you're familiar with chaos, Ray, from Midjourney.
Like maybe not. No,
it's like a randomness score. It's like a Z score that you can assign. You can like say like I want low randomness. So you know how you get like 4 variants with each image that you generate. So if you say like low chaos or no chaos, it will have very similar variants of image. But if you have high chaos, it'll be like all right, different orientation, like different aspect, all these different changes, different noise, different styles, etc. But like, what happens when it starts generating net new content and then ingesting it and learning from what it just created?
Well, I mean, that's... I don't know.
When do the humans go away?
Right, exactly. I feel like that's the question you're asking. But, I mean, that's kind of the way Google works. Like the literal search engine is a machine learning like algorithm. It's learning on a machine, right? And there are like scientists or data engineers or whatever at Google who nobody truly knows exactly how it gets you the results that it does.
Right. There's already the hallucination factor, right? And,
yeah, like there's just so much that it's learning from itself that it doesn't understand. And as soon as it gets better and stronger, it like sort of cuts off what it doesn't need, and then it does it again. Like it replicates the machine learning process, and it gets better and better and better, and then it just drops the dead weight, and then it gets better and better and better, and it keeps learning more and more and more. And that's how Google has become the powerhouse in our world that it has today. But honestly, I'm thinking if it gets to that point and it's learned truly every single piece of data, I'm wondering, like, is it now just going to start outputting new content?
Well, that's what I mean. And like the second that it does, and it starts training, that's the key.
Truly new content,
training
too.
itself,
not
training
just synopsis.
Itself.
Like, you know what I mean? Like truly, like you're saying, new research almost. Like could it do that?
Yeah, this 1937 study did not consider this from this other paper over here. And combining two pieces together and.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Oh, like without a human prompting it. Because now, that's kind of where we're at.
There's this blind spot in this one study that didn't happen and wasn't accounted from this study over here, and then boom.
Yeah, what happens if we merge the findings from...
Right.
Yeah.
Like that could be a new piece of content that no one's put together that a bot could do. Like, well, I don't know that we're there yet, but look, in this hypothetical that you're talking about now, like maybe that's what happens. Maybe it's developing its own, and not just synopsis, right? Like that's because we're at that stage now where it's kind of summarizing.
That's exactly what it's just synthesizing the current existing corpus it's been trained on. If you're lucky, you have plugins, you feed it proprietary data, it synthesizes that. It's good at understanding it and giving us things like summaries, like the best of or the highlights or whatever. But it's up to, that's why like right now it's so key to be a master prompt engineer is what I keep calling it, because it's up to us to have the insight to say, oh yeah, there was that study, there was Charles Duhigg, and I combine that with James Clear Atomic Habits, and now I have the ultimate machine to master my habits or whatever, but eventually, right, it's like, what if it becomes the agent and we don't, you know what I mean? It starts doing unpredictable like combinations to produce novel outputs, and I don't know. I just thought that was crazy to even think about.
And the vacuum cleaners take over your house, and the microwaves team up, and
it's the meme of the Roomba with the knife.
Right?
On top.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's wild. Well, okay, that's exciting. Hopefully, that's at least like 3 to 6 months out. Yeah. I don't know. It's going pretty quick though.
Maybe 3 to 6 weeks at this point, with how things have evolved.
Yep. Wow.
So where do we go from here?
I don't know. I mean, we could talk really quick about in Bing. So if you go in Bing, the new Bing, and you have that chat, right? So if you prompt it through the chat widget, right, use their AI-infused search experience. We've been noticing for a couple of months now that they're serving ads within those AI-powered results. I can only assume that's what's next on SGE, right? Once they get enough adoption, right? Because now it's like in labs and you have to opt in, all this. But once it's like the default, like everyone has Gemini. It's like now imagine spring 2024. SGE is like the default. It's powered by Gemini. Google has more compute than anyone. So it's just like rolled out. And this is like the new, like we were joking before, Blake, about it's like when mobile first SERPs went live as like the default, now it's like, imagine SGE is the default. And this goes back to the thing about shopping, right? Because so far, I've got Alexa at home and I use it, and it's pretty great for different things, but it's really limited. It's like, well, if I really want to do something really cool, I'd need an app, and probably an app doesn't even exist for the use case I'm imagining, yet. But now imagine like it's all embedded in SGE, like all that functionality in it. And if and when ads happen, now we're like back to the voice thing. So now I've got my phone, I'm sitting in the kitchen at home, hey, Google, can you order some more bananas? And then Google Pay, it's done. All right. Hour later, it's there, like that's where this is headed. Right. And ads, whether it's RSAs or whatever, right. That's all coming. And I wonder too, Blake, like, you talked about how SGE is primarily text right now with some cards and stuff like that. Like in the future, does SGE decide what SERP features to pull in based on the query? It's like, oh, based on your search, that was a navigational and it's local. So guess what? Now the map pack's going to be in there. And now it's going to be like one click to Google Maps and you can just be like, yep, throw the directions on my Google Maps.
Right. Like if it's not a commercial intent keyword, like perhaps that's maybe where you get more SGE or like it's probably gonna
more
vary.
text based, but then it's like, oh, it's commercial this, okay, here's a shopping carousel within it.
Yeah.
Or it's directions, what are the hours in this? Oh, do you want a reservation?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Okay, your reservation's done. Here's
the best birthday gift for blah, 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 blah. Here's shopping ads or something like that.
And then it's like, you might, what are you planning on wearing? Oh, well, the dress code is this. Okay, do you have that? No, I don't. Oh,
here's party planning
here's
supplies.
a blue shirt, great, awesome.
So
I don't know.
I mean, I just did a search for a restaurant near me, and I feel like it's already sort of happening, to be honest.
It's learning from our conversation.
Yeah, right now. But it just pulled up, like, a list of restaurants that are near me.
Oh, with the labels on it, too?
Yeah. It's incredible. It's got reviews, it's got its location, a brief overview, and then similar results embedded next to it as well, like as the source. Again, this is sort of as the source.
Oh yeah.
So it's happening. I honestly, and this is the case too. Like, I a lot of times have been, and this is why I talked about I want to see like the engagement levels on these generative AIs, because a lot of times too I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring generative AI because it's all.
You're scrolling past it.
I'm scrolling past it, and the reason sometimes, and I don't know how Google does this or why it decides to do this, but sometimes it will automatically generate the generative AI automatically. But sometimes you have to click generate,
yes,
and then it will do that. And in those cases, I'm almost always ignoring it. It just hasn't been a common.
It has to be a prediction score. Then it has to know, like, based on this one, we can predict what you're likely to need or want in that micro moment. Therefore, we know high confidence, like, this is one we're going to give you.
I just did like a similar search, but I also said like, I did a follow-up question and I said, what are gluten-free options? Because my wife likes gluten-free options. And then it also gave me, it seems like it's combing through like reviews, for example. So now it's like, here's this restaurant combing through reviews. It has XYZ gluten-free options. And then it says other top restaurants in that area. So like you're able to interact and chat with it as well. And then it gives me a bunch of other like things people also asked, which is cool.
It's digging up the follow-up question info sooner. It's like, because usually what would be as a user journey, you'd click, and then you're on the PDF, and then you're like, I don't know, is this cauliflower pizza thing, is it on there? Is it gluten-free? What's going on? No, it has, no, it has flour in it. No. But it's like scraping that. So back to the importance of having like rich data and having those details. Yeah, that's interesting. But Blake, like to your point, even if you scroll past, isn't it going to be like a net click share game, just like with ads, right? It's like, hey, I never click on ads and this, But hey, aren't you more likely to click on it organically if you saw the ad, you saw it in the map pack, now you're seeing the blue link or whatever, like you're seeing featured snippet. Yeah, it's like, oh, it's appearing again above the fold or in the top 10, whatever, right? You're like more likely, just from a click share perspective, or even a branding, like, let's say you did the search, had to set the phone down, kids going crazy, but then the next day and you come back and you're like, what was, oh, that's right, I was seeing the Acme Corp like 4 times. I better go on their Facebook and like look up Acme Corp and like get the thing that I need there. You know what I mean?
Right in the middle of your child's temper tantrum.
No, like the next day or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what I'm saying.
I know. I mean,
it's like a branding or like
you want to be
recall.
there if you can.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the day, like you want to always be there. And we talk about this. This is something too we talk about internally, and I think maybe it's come up in another podcast. But like having ads over your like just the whole landscape. You want to be there every single time that you can possibly be there because you're more likely to win the click at the end of the day. Which is also, I mean, and obviously ads are always first, so it's always harder to win the organic click. I know. I just have to remind everyone that
you do. Good ads are first.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Good ads. Well, they're also below. They really sandwich it. But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm just blinded by
Blake hates ads.
Yeah.
No, it's the idea of maximizing your visibility.
Exactly.
Regardless of it's a 0-click SERP, it's a whatever.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
a 0-click SERP, if you can win the featured snippet, a lot of times those are 0-click. Like that's what we think about when we think of 0-click. You want to win that featured snippet. It's a branding play at the end of the day, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if there's an area in which you can win and you want to be there, you want to win it because you can increase your brand awareness. You can they're more likely to remember you down the road as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is heading to an increasingly like interdisciplinary approach, because at the end, right, it's like, what are we doing? We're doing search engine marketing, and there used to be like a lot cleaner lanes between paid and organic. Those lanes are blurring, especially if SGE, like if the SERP goes SGE first, which I predict it will at some point. Otherwise, why would they have it occupy so much real estate currently? It's faster. It's better. I mean, the fact that you're getting the follow-up question answered immediately without clicking through it, without the headache, it's clear. It's got to be better for users, So, yeah, interdisciplinary approach, and that's where we're going to look at, like, the totality of it's like back to, keyword research, user needs, understanding that user need at the core, anticipating likely follow-up questions and information, like just knowing what that journey is for that user need, and designing content and advertising that can address each step of that need, to ultimately bring that user into your ecosystem, and help them out, help them solve their problem. That's what I think good marketing will be, which is what it's always been. It just looks a little bit differently now.
Right.
Aided by technology. Cool. Well, anything else for the random show?
Not for me, I don't think.
No, I think we're good.
It really turned out to be the impact of AI on search and SERPs more than the random show, but it was really fun to deep dive on this. So if anyone's seeing anything cool in their own experiments or their own experience with the search engine results pages, or curious how this applies to them, how they can get ready, I guess, or just really take action now because it's changing so quickly, let us know. Go to 2100digital.com and contact us, and look forward to catching up with you guys.